What is up, everybody? Welcome in. Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. The band is back together, and we got a ton to talk to. And I want to, with Phil Perry and Matt Cassel, bring our focus away from the NFL, bring it away from the AFC, bring it right down to a very specific slice of the world. It's the AFC East. Phil and Matt, the Dolphins adding Tyreek Hill today, Terron Armstead earlier in the week, the Jets and Bills. That's the main competition. Before we get into the ways and means of the ads, Matt, how do NFL teams approach their season? It's with the division title in mind first, right?
It always starts with the division. I mean, because if you don't take care of your own division and you don't win that division, you're not going to make the playoffs. So primary focus, first and foremost, every single year is to go out and win your division. And that gives you an opportunity to go to the playoffs and do what you ultimately want to do, which is make the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. So it all starts with the division. And that's what we always talk about with inside that building.
Winning the division just got a lot harder though, Tom, I think.
And it's funny because just more broadly, I think Patriots fans, Phil, and the media is having a hard time understanding that stop worrying about the Chiefs and the Bengals and how many teams are ahead of you in the conference or in the NFL. Just bring it down. Those teams are kind of in another town, zip code right now. Yes or no? Do you agree with that?
I do to an extent. I understand why people look at it that way because for so long, the Patriots were the best team in football, period, either conference. Right. And so it was like, okay, who's really going to be an impediment on our way to the Super Bowl? You know, like it's just like ridiculous conversations, which were legitimate conversations year after year after year. But now I think you're right. Focus on the division. The Bills are clearly, to me, still the cream of the crop in the AFC East. But what the Dolphins have done over the course of the last couple of days here, because Tyreek Hill, as well as Terron Armstead at tackle, really make them a significantly better team. I would say they're still in the Patriots tier, but they are better. There's no doubt about it.
Where would you say, Phil, the Patriots are better than the Dolphins on their roster, not on their sideline, on their roster?
Quarterback is where I would start. And I would say
Teddy Bridgewater's in town, though.
It's a good start.
It's a good place to be. I would say you would look at the Patriots offensive line and you'd still say as a group, that group is still better than what the Dolphins have at the moment. And I think defensively, their front is probably more talented than what the Dolphins have. The Dolphins secondary is loaded.
Right.
But Tom, to me, I know you don't want to talk about coach right now, but I don't know about you guys, the two most important people in the franchise are better for the Patriots than they are for the Dolphins, head coach and quarterback.
Who was a better coach team in 2021, the Dolphins or the Patriots, based upon the results in those games? Matthew.
I still believe that.
I mean, I know they've turned it over.
Right. They turned it over. They didn't do the things that they didn't execute. So like players got to go out and execute the game plan. And at the end of the day, Coach Belichick is a better coach than Brian Flores, in my opinion. And he's also what he did last year with the group that he had with a rookie quarterback, with all the new faces was, an outstanding coaching job. And you'll see that year in and year out from Coach Belichick. And there's a consistency level there. So I still think that he is a better coach. However, it does come down to execution. You can't turn over the ball. You can't make the bad mistakes, have the penalties, all the things that we saw that resulted in the loss. You can't do that against good football teams or guys within your division that also they have such a familiarity with your personnel, with how you like to call that your offensive scheme and your defensive scheme and how to attack you. So it comes down to the little things. And that's something that we also talk about a lot.
So certainly Bill Belichick's resume compared to Mike McDaniel's, they don't even match up. And I'm sure that Mike McDaniel would, hit his knees if Bill Belichick told him to, because that seems like the kind of guy he is in terms of having reverence for what people have accomplished. All those coaches are like that. But I still think we might be hung up a little bit on what the Patriots were in terms of their coaching staff, efficiency, execution. The last 3 years, they've ended the season poorly, and 19 included with Tom Brady. Their coaching staff has gotten worse. So I'm like, now I'm on a tangent. And I shouldn't be because we're talking AFC East, but I don't know if coaching is the wild advantage that it has been in the past. Yeah, I'd rather see Bill Belichick than Robert Saleh when I look at the sideline. But I felt the same way about Zach Taylor a couple of years ago, and he almost won a damn Super Bowl, Phil.
Yeah, but not because of him. I mean, despite Zach Taylor, they get to the Super Bowl and almost win the
thing. Did you say despite?
Despite, D-E-S-P-I-T-E, despite.
Well, who was running the team?
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow, Smoking Joe.
Under whose command?
His own. Listen, I think there are bad coaches who go far in this league and win Super Bowls at times in this league. And I still think Bill Belichick is right there at the top of the league. And so again, to me, this is why they're in the same tier, because I think when you look at it talent wise, and I was just looking at the Dolphins front seven again, even the linebacker level is, and I know we could argue probably right now whether the Patriots have a better linebacker room than the Dolphins, because neither is all that impressive at the moment. But head coach, quarterback, when you have the advantage there, you can't say, to me, you can't, that the Dolphins are definitively better than the Patriots, because those two spots matter too much.
I'm going to make a very you hit it, and then I have to make a very succinct point after.
What I will say is, though, coaching can get you to a certain level, and then at the same point that what I'm trying to say is, when you have that type of talent surrounding a quarterback, even if Tua is not as good as Mac Jones, but now you have Jalen Waddle, you have Tyreek Hill, you still have Davante Parker, you got Gesicki. I mean, that talent pool right there is a tough task for any defense to go up to, even with the best scheme. So you have to have players to make plays, to match up. Otherwise, players' talent can sometimes overcome bad coaching. And we've seen that. And like you just, a case in point, a lot of times when the Bengals won those games, it didn't come down to great coaching. It was just great ball play by the quarterback position, by those wide receivers that they have. And so, I mean, there's such a catch-22 when it talks about coaching versus talent, because talent can overcome a lot of bad coaching in this league.
Let me make this very succinct point. Relative to Bill Belichick, the greatest coach in NFL history, perhaps American professional sports, it's not been a good run for the Patriots sideline in the last few years. They haven't played well. They certainly haven't coached well, and Belichick has acknowledged that. I'm not saying Mike McDaniel is a better head coach, but with the outflow of assistant coaches who have to carry the load for teams positionally, especially offensively with Josh McDaniels going out and uncertainty, I don't know if the Patriots coaching staff, despite the fact they have a giant on the sidelines, is necessarily that much better than everyone else, because there are so few coaches. This is a team that got ripped an absolute brand new one the two times it played the Buffalo Bills at the end of the season, defensively, which is supposed to be their bailiwick. And they've moved on from J.C. Jackson. They spent the beginning of the year having problems with substitutions and penalties. They kind of closed the end of the year having the same kinds of problems in addition to offensive breakdowns. So that's kind of the point I'm making. The advantage the Patriots have on the sideline, based upon history, is valid. Based upon recent returns in the way they've played and the way they've played down the stretch, I don't think the Patriots coaching staff, especially with the attrition, is the major check mark that it's been in the past.
That's fine.
Fair?
I would say no. I would just disagree with you. I would disagree because we know zero about Mike McDaniel, and I still believe
Mike McDaniel. But I'm saying generally, let's keep it to the Patriots then. Instead of Mike McDaniel, is the Patriots coaching staff a major check mark every single week now?
I think it is most weeks. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're playing the Chiefs. I like Andy Reid. If they're playing, I don't know. It depends on the matchup. I do. I think it is. I think if they had more talent, we would be seeing that, but I guess that's two different conversations. I would say the other thing that I like about this move for the Dolphins is that if you have a quarterback who you have some questions about, that you're not sure is a franchise guy, even though you've taken him in the top half of the first round, Matt, what you have to do before he gets to year 3 is you have to see how good he can be. Because otherwise you're in limbo trying to figure out whether you want to extend this guy or not. Because that's usually when it happens, is after year 3, before year 4. He's going into year 3 now. They've pushed all their chips in the middle of the table. And they said, Tua, if you're a star, you better perform like one, because there's no excuse now.
You got to prove it. I mean, and that's what it comes down to. And that's what they've done. They've surrounded him with the talent. They've got him the left tackle. They've done everything that they can to put the supporting cast around him. And now it's up to him to go out and perform. And I promise you, with a new head coach, they bring in Teddy Bridgewater, all that stuff. If he doesn't perform, then Teddy Bridgewater will be taken over for the more consistent play, somebody that they know that what they're going to get. But the chips are all out there. Look, if Tua, you're going to be the guy, you're going to have to show us, and you're going to have to show us early, because I don't think that they're going to be one of those teams right now, especially with the new head coach, that is just going to sit there and go through a really difficult season where he's struggling to, get his bearings, and he doesn't have command of the offense. They'll make that switch early. So we're going to find out real quick how Tua is going to perform with all those guys around him.
When we look, just staying in the AFC East, here's a couple of different moves that the Jets made. Meanwhile, Laken Tomlinson, you're not going to go crazy about that. DJ Reed, a safety, he's a good player. CJ Uzoma, tight end, he's coming over from Cincinnati. Tyler Conklin, another tight end. So, they're changing themselves a little bit, not drastically, but, when I look at the Patriots, the Jets are certainly still in their rearview mirror by a fair margin. But the Bills haven't lost much. Even when they lost Cole Beasley, they added Jamison Crowder. Are the Patriots closer to the Dolphins or the Bills, Phil?
Dolphins. I think the Bills, again, they're just in a different tier right now. And I think the Dolphins are trying to get in that tier by building, honestly, in a similar way that the Bills did with Josh Allen, which was, all right, Josh, if you're good, we're going to give you Stephon Diggs. We're going to give you Cole Beasley. We're going to give you everything you need to succeed here, buddy. And if you can take your game to the next level, then, we're going to make you one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. And so, I just wonder, knowing that happens quickly. We think about the rookie contract, first round pick, 5-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's 3 years. And after 3 years, whether you're extending a guy or not. It doesn't mean it has to happen at that point in time, but are the Patriots really going to know that much more about Mac Jones's ceiling after year 2 if he goes into this coming year with the same complement of weapons and a much less experienced, whoever it is, less experienced play caller? I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
How significant is your concern about the development of Mac Jones in 2021? Next year, 2022.
2022. I mean, I like Mac Jones, and we've already seen what he's accomplished in his short period of time in this league, how he came in, how he handled the league, how he took the team on his shoulders at times. No moment was too big for him. Now it's all about the development this offseason.
But this is supposed to be the leap year, right?
This is supposed to be the leap year. And I think that there's still a lot to be made because, again, he's still within that building. They still have consistency. All those coaches, those position coaches that you're talking about, have been in the meeting with Mac Jones. Now the step for him is not just development in certain areas from a physical domain, but at the same time, it's having a bigger voice and going into those meetings, whoever the offensive coordinator is, whoever's calling plays, and letting him say, hey, I really like this play. This is how I think we should do it. Or just a more voice and more input in terms of the game plan to a certain extent, of course, but that's where he's got to show even more growth than what he had last year. Because I'll tell you what, look, as a rookie, you even if you're starting, even if you're playing, it took time. I was in my 4th year when I took over and started to play for the Patriots, and I was in the system. I was comfortable with Josh McDaniels, but it took time for me to sit there and say, hey, Josh, I really don't like this play that you put in on 3rd down. That red zone play, I'm not seeing it in my mind. I'd rather call this. And that's the next step that you take in the progression of becoming the franchise guy and being the voice in not only outside of the building, but inside that building, particularly in those meetings when you're one-on-one with your OC. And
that's what sucks to me for him, is that you went 4 years, and then finally when you got in there, you then felt, okay, now I really can make some decisions. And this is even though Josh was counseling you all that time, the relationship changed.
Right.
The relationship's changing now. I mean, there's going to be a component, Phil, to Mac Jones having to usher along the offensive coordinator to a degree. Bill Belichick talked about one of the hardest things about coaching Tom Brady was being more prepared for him or than him on a regular basis, to give him something new every week. That's going to be hard for whoever the Patriots have ticketed to be their OC/quarterbacks coach. Yes.
It's going to be incredibly difficult. And I know, we've talked to different people. Tom, you had Brian Schottenheimer on the podcast talking about just the importance of that relationship, the ability to get into a rhythm. And it's not just something that's found on game day. It's found during the week. It's found over a long period of time. Charlie Weiss saying similar things to me at the combine. And so the learning curve is going to be steep for whoever is in that role. Now, lucky for whoever that is, Mac Jones is a pretty smart guy. And I think he will be able to take the reins to a certain extent and bring the offense along in a direction that he feels comfortable. But it's not going to be the same kind of guidance that he was getting last year. It's impossible that they'll get to that point. So by not giving him high-end explosive weaponry that makes his life easier, and then also taking the play call away and also taking one of his best offensive linemen away, I think he's going to be better in year 2. He's going to improve as an individual player. I just don't think we're going to really get close to his ceiling, which to me is unfortunate. He's still very obviously very early in his career, but I think you'd like to make, I think there'll be a jump. I think we will, by the end of year 2, have wanted to see even more of a jump potentially.
Yeah, we might not see it statistically, right, Matt?
Right. I mean, you might not see, again, like Phil just said, he has the same cast of characters, right? We know these guys. We know what kind of personnel groups they're going to run and how they're going to try to play action pass and set up the possession passing game. That's what they've always been. But right now, when you look at this roster, there's no dominant number one on the outside, right? They have serviceable. I wouldn't even say serviceable. That it would be demeaning to all those guys because they're all good players, but they're not a true number one. Where you look out there and they're manning you up, they want to bring pressure. You've got blitz zero, and you can smile on your face and go, "I've got my guy out there. I know if I give him an opportunity, he's going to go make a play." They just don't have that dynamic type of receiver. And so with that being said, that's how they have to play the game, right? They have to dink and dunk down the field, take their shots every now and then, utilize a tight end position where they don't have a guy that's so explosive like a Tyreek Hill or something like that, where you can drop the ball off on a little under route and he'll break it for 50. And it just completely changes the outlook of the game at any given point. So that's what you're dealing with when you're looking at this roster right now from an offensive side of the ball.
It's like
lucky for them, Tom. Sorry, I was just going to say, lucky for them in the draft. If you hit on the right guy, whether it's first, second, third round, you hit on the right guy, it can change your entire offense. So
just an
that might be all
guy.
it takes.
Somebody who can be a 35-yard catch and run, 45-yard catch and run, like Edelman could do that. Brandon Cooks could do it down the sideline. Aaron Hernandez was ridiculous with the amount of space that he could take up in chunks.
Yards.
And they don't have chunk players right now necessarily. But while we say all that, Phil, and we look at the Patriots, what do you think is a more significant hole with the addition of Tyreek Hill that the Patriots need filling? Corner or wide receiver? Because I think the wide receiver complement is fine, okay. We can roll it out there and do okay, beat some teams. Defensively, it's terrifying.
Yeah, offensively, I think I'm with you all the way, Tom. Offensively, even though they could use that explosive threat, they were, with this cast of characters, they were a top 10 scoring offense in the regular season last year. So nobody thinks of them as an elite offense, and I think rightfully so, but they were still pretty damn efficient last year with this group. Defensively, at corner especially, I think you need a corner who runs a 4-3, and you needed him yesterday, Matt, to run with these Dolphins receivers. You got Jalen Waddle there. Now you have Tyreek Hill. Jonathan Jones can only be in one place at one time, and he's coming off an injury himself. So
right,
you look at that complement that they have at that specific position, and they need, it's not coming in free agency. I don't think. You look at the names that are left. Maybe it's via trade, but it might have to be, again, it might have to be a draft pick that ends up getting a real significant role real early to be able to match up with some of these receiving groups they're going to see in the division.
I mean, you're just talking about the division, right? And the division has gotten better at the wide receiver position. Everybody other than the Patriots right now. And when you lose a guy like J.C. Jackson, we always had this conversation. Is he a number one cornerback? Is he truly a shutdown corner? Is he the number two? He just makes plays. But at the end of the day, the production that he has, whoever they bring in is going to have to be able to step up and give them that type of presence. And if they want to continue to play the man coverage that they do, because they love to mix and match coverage, but with all the guys that they you have to have versatility, move inside and out. And we also saw as the year went on, when you get to week 17, right, and you've got injuries by Jonathan Jones is out, and now your depth chart is down to this, that, and the other. Miles Bryant is playing your primary nickel, which really he's more of a substitute guy, right? Now you can't match up. And at the end of the day, this is a matchup driven league. And when you have a multitude of receivers out there that create issues for you, now it forces your hand to play maybe defenses that normally you don't want to play, right? You play more zone, you give them the easy throws, and now they can work their way down the field that way. The other part of it is they also have to get better in the run game. I mean, that's a big part of it. What happened last year at the end of the year, they got run through at times, and they couldn't stop the run to put themselves in a better position on third down to set up more difficult passing conversions for the opposing team.
And just think about Tom, just really quickly, the last year when they played the Dolphins, what were the plays that were forcing Patriots fans everywhere to just rip their head out, rip their hair out, not their heads? That would be
just the little slant, right?
The little slant when they're playing off. So what Matt's talking about is if you don't have the bodies to match up in man against a team like the Dolphins, and now you have two guys that run probably like in the 4.2s when they're fully healthy to just run these slants when you're playing off coverage. I mean, those guys could take one of those little slants 80 yards for a touchdown at any given moment. That's what's scary about the way that offense is built now in Miami.
They're going to make him look like Steve friggin' Young.
They might just be the point guard, right, Matt?
Yeah. All you got to do is, as long as he can distribute the ball and get it into his playmaker hands, that's the beauty of the position when you're surrounded by really talented players. In the zone read and what they got going later in the year for the Miami Dolphins is a lot of easy throws, a lot of quick slants. It was getting the ball out of his hands. But like we just talked about, those type of explosive players, when you get the ball in their hands in space, and now all of a sudden a 5-yard under route or a 6-yard slant, now they break it for 35. And now you're going, oh my goodness, this is terrible, right? Because they're taking it to the house and now you're playing from behind. It's just all those different things that come along with talented wide receivers. And that's why it's such a priority for all these teams to bring those guys in, because if the quarterback can just accurately distribute the ball, he doesn't have to be the best. He just has to take care of the ball and deliver the baby and off to the races.
Deliver the baby. Comes back a little bit to that conversation about how draft picks are in some ways undervalued. You know, what Miami has done. You know, they package a bunch of draft picks the same way the Raiders did last week. And Phil, that leads me to a question too, not about that whole personnel thing, because there's different philosophical things. And I think it's okay to go after a player. You go after Tyreek Hill and you're the Dolphins. Why didn't the Patriots do that? I don't know if they're a Tyreek Hill. I think they have too many other things they have to address. Right? I mean, why wouldn't the Patriots be in on Tyreek Hill or Davante Adams? I don't want to be excuse making for them, but I just don't think they're a good enough team to do it. Tell me why you think they wouldn't be in on those guys.
Well, I would say first, I think those guys are both talented enough that it would change your season if you had those guys. So you might not be just a receiver away from being a true Super Bowl contender, but it could get you damn close. I think the reason you wouldn't be in, just from talking to some people in the league this morning, you know, the obvious, right? The trade compensation you're giving up. So the Dolphins have had a lot of picks, right? And they've built up this ammo so they can make this kind of deal. That's number one. The Patriots, on the other hand, are trying to get younger over a long stretch of time here where they haven't been able to draft all that well. So giving up that kind of draft capital might not make a ton of sense for them. But the other thing is, you're paying a receiver the highest paid player ever at his position. And in an off season where the Patriots don't want to spend, it's very clear they spent a lot of money last year. They're not going to do the same thing again this year. That's another reason they'd be out.
Yeah, it just simply comes down to draft compensation. How much are you willing to give up for that type of player who, like Phil just said, can change everything that you envision for that season because he's that special. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's a numbers game too. How much are you willing to pay that guy for the next however many years? And they don't have a ton of money, a ton of cap space in order to go out. They would have to shift so many different things around to make that actually be even something that you could envision.
They could do it because they have so much cap space next year. And I think that Phil helped me understand something that's probably the most primarily important thing to the Patriots. The difference between the Patriots and the Raiders, for instance, and the Dolphins is that they need to get younger. Gerard Mayo talked about it at the Super Bowl. We've watched it. Their best players are Devin McCourty and Matt Slater in some regards, better players. I shouldn't say best. They need to get younger. And you have swung and missed in the second and third rounds for years. So you can't just vomit up all your picks to get a guy who's pushing 30, whether it's Adams or whether it's Tyreek Hill. Not debating the let's just call it player X, who's going to be $170 million contract making 21 a year. You're right, Phil, that's the crux of it. It isn't, hey, we can't use that guy, or hey, it won't make our team better. It's like, we sucked in the draft, so we got to get better at the draft. So we can't go shopping right now. Budget sucks. You guys have a good time. Sorry. Yeah, send a pick. But I think that's really the crux of the issue. It's not that they're cheap. It's just, well, they're thrifty. But they also can't do it right now. So Phil, thank you. Thank you for, sometimes you need a redirection. Sometimes you need somebody has to put their hand on top of your head and go, look at that. That's going to help you. And that helped me. Matt, Jakob Johnson.
Jakob
has signed with the Raiders. And in doing so, he told German media, that German media always scooping us,
German media,
that his position in New England is being phased out. So I don't care about Jakob anymore, but I do care about why the Patriots would move away from their pounding fullback.
Right. He was a great presence for them. Obviously, they ran a lot of 21 personnel. And when they did, that means he was the fullback. He was the lead blocker, and he did an exceptional job for him. But with a guy like Jonnu Smith, for instance, they can get into 12 personnel. And he did this in Tennessee as well, where they can motion him back in the backfield. He can take on that fullback position. And
so you're going from 12. One back,
two tight ends, right?
And then you can motion him into the backfield. Now you've turned yourself into 21, two backs, one tight end.
That's exactly right. Okay. So he has that type of versatility, right? Where he's not just stationary, where he's just a tight end at the end of the line of scrimmage and he's blocking, the backside of something. He can come into the backfield and be your lead blocker on the linebacker. He can go and you can run your bob where he's going to lead up and be the fullback on the will linebacker. And we even saw them do that at times last year, where you have the play action where he bluffs that block and leaks out into the flat. So you can do a number of different things. He also is a very good pass catcher, where if you get the ball in his hands, we've seen him be able to make plays. Now, it wasn't the consistency that we've seen that in the past, but it's very easy to be able to have one of those tight ends to be able to, even Asiasi. Is it Asiasi? I'm sorry.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah, I knew it. And sometimes I always second guess.
Don't forget Dalton Keene.
Dalton Keene. I mean, guys like that are willing to go in and get nitty gritty on the interior part of that defense and lead up on a linebacker or safety. You can do that easily with any type of tight end position.
Phil, could that be the plan? We just got to run a whole bunch of H-backs at you people. Okay, have fun with this.
I think it has to be to a certain extent, because you've just paid Jonnu Smith so much money. You have to figure out ways to use him, to get him on the field and deploy him in a way that helps your team. I think it's a little damning that they couldn't figure out a way to do that last year, and that they decided, you know what? Better for us to have 21 personnel on the field for about a quarter of our snaps versus 12 personnel with both our highest paid offensive players, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, on the field at the same time. They were around 15%, even less than that last year, Matt. 12 personnel. I mean, it just wasn't working for them, and they eventually pulled the ripcord and said, we're not doing this anymore. I mean, Jonnu Smith had games late in the season where he's sniffing 10-ish snaps total offensively. You can't have that anymore.
He had like 25 targets. He had 47 targets overall, 25 in the first 5 games. In the next, 12, he had 20 targets. He just became, okay, we don't know what to do with him. We'll see him next year. It was bizarre.
Right. He just wasn't part of the offense, and maybe this is a way that they can get him a bigger role in this offense. And the other part of this is if he can go back and do that on a consistent basis, where he lines up in the backfield and can run downhill. What usually happens to the defensive side of the ball is, instead of going big nickel or something like that, they can get into base personnel. They have to respect the fact that he'll come downhill and he'll hit you. And then what happens from there, if you're a smart offensive coordinator, you spread them out. And you get better matchups on the inside with your wide receiver or Jonnu Smith on a linebacker versus a safety or a nickel or something like that. And even Hunter Henry will be provided with more of a better matchup against lesser personnel, because they have to sit there and say, hey, they can run the ball, this personnel group, and they're heavy with the run group into this 12 personnel, so that it works to your advantage in that way as well.
I like if they can turn him into, Tom, Kyle Juszczyk.
Yes.
I like that for the Patriots offense. That would be kind of fun. The issue is you're still paying him like a real tight end, whereas Kyle Juszczyk isn't making that kind of money. And you should be able to kind of figure out a way to get that role for a little bit cheaper. I don't love them getting away from the fullback. I'll be totally honest with you, because I think there are things that really are advantages to having one. Number one, there aren't many out there. And so teams aren't used to preparing for offenses that have fullbacks, big 250-ish, James Devlin, Jakob Johnson. Teams can't prepare for that. For the most part, because most of them don't have that guy. So you go all summer without looking at a fullback. And then you see the Patriots week 1 or week 5 or whatever it is. You say, how am I supposed to fit the run against this? This is weird. So that's number one. Number two, it's a cheap option that gives you that quote unquote exotic look. It's exotic now in today's NFL. It didn't used to be. But it also gives you an element of toughness that I know Bill Belichick values. And so it surprises me that he's moving away from this. I remember one of the first people he saw after they won the Super Bowl in 2018 on the field is James Devlin, pat him on the shoulder pad and said, you gave us the toughness that we needed. Like he singled him out. And I think he was right. Yep. I think he was right. They changed their offense. It totally changed once they started leaning on James Devlin a little bit more. So I think it's a mistake to totally get away from it because I don't think Jonnu Smith can do it. I understand they have to make this move maybe because of the money they've poured into Jonnu Smith, but I don't love it for their offense.
I'll say this, though. I mean, with the 12 personnel, that's just an option of what they can do. But they also can go out, just like they did with those last two guys that you mentioned, and get a free agent guy, somebody that's going to come in and he's a fullback. Fullbacks are not sought after, so to speak, in the draft, right? You're not sitting there going your second, third, fourth round going, God, we got to get that fullback.
But they said they were eliminating it.
Well, that's what Jakob said.
That's what he said. But I mean, there's no telling. They're going to go, like, if they want to go out and they say they're looking at their personnel saying, hey, you know what? We need a fullback, which they very well could throughout this. They can go out and free agent, whether it's free agency or I'm saying after the draft, and probably pick up that guy that's going to come in, because most of the fullbacks that I've ever been around in my career, most of them are free agents. They weren't drafted to be fullbacks, right? Or they were converted in some manner to become a fullback. So it's not a position in which every team's sitting out there with their board and going, these are the best fullbacks that we're going to bring in. They're going to be able to find a guy to come in, run downhill, because it's a very tailored position where you've got to find the right mindset to come down and stick your head in there each and every play and blow somebody up at the linebacker position.
Here's how we end up circling back, though, to the present problem that we just gloss over. And that's that, okay, you got a new offensive coordinator. I don't know who the play caller is. I don't know what Joe Judge and Matt Patricia's savvy is. Maybe Nick Caley has it, but who's going to be the one who says, damn it, this isn't working. Let's go get ourselves a fullback. Well, it has to be Bill Belichick. So all those guys are going to be doing their work, wondering, because Bill likes to develop on the fly. Is this what you're looking for, Bill? Bill, is this what you're looking for? Bill, is this what you want? I just don't think that the autonomy of the offense, Bill has so much on him, of the offense, of the coaching staff, is what you're looking for. When we're talking about a guy who came to the Patriots in 2000 and talked about how important it was to delegate responsibility and let other people do things, and now in 2022, everything is falling on the 70-year-old shoulders. It is interesting, to say the least.
It's interesting, but I mean, we did the same thing when Charlie Weiss left my rookie year, and Josh McDaniels was an unknown guy that was stepped up and he took over the reins, and it was the same kind of juggling act. I'm sure the conversations, hey, Bill, what do you want? Coach Skarnecki really handled the run game, and it was heavily involved in the run game. And so it's going to be one of those things that they're going to have to all work together, but there's definitely going to be that communication that takes place in which Bill will take the lead, but it's not something that you can't still achieve what you're wanting to achieve just because there's a lot of moving parts now with a different OC at the helm for the Patriots.
Well, it'll be fascinating to watch develop.
Fascinating.
And I reserve the right to say, what the hell are they doing? Phil, we'll see you later. We're going to be down the owners' meetings this weekend into next week. So next time you'll see us on this pod, it will be from West Palm Beach. Peace out, Girl Scouts.